today we're going to talk about how interactions with our families and specifically our children led us to the messaging that we offered in our sermons on the high holidays this past year in 2025, 5786 on the Jewish calendar. And so to start off, we want to just let you know who our families are. And so my wife, Deva, and I are blessed with 4 children. The oldest is Aiden. He is a first-year student at the University of Pittsburgh, and he is 18, about to turn 19, if you can believe it. I can't. Then we have Ezra, who is a first-year student at the Barak Hebrew Academy. He's in 9th grade, and he is just about to turn 15. We have Avi, who is 11 and is in 6th grade at Barak. And we have Anna L., who is at Perlman Jewish Day School, and she is turning 7.
Hi, my name is Rabbi Andrew Markowitz. I am blessed to be the partner in prayer of Rabbi Eric Yanoff here at Edith Israel. My lovely wife, Michelle, and I have 2 rambunctious boys, Simcha, who is 8, and Sasson, who is 5. Simi is in 3rd grade at Perlman, and Sunny is in kindergarten at Gan at Perlman. And yeah, and if you want them, we'll sell them to you real cheap.
We have had conversations going back to last April about what these high holidays were going to look like. And now we're in Cheshvan, the Jewish month that has no holidays. We're on the other end of the holiday.
Rabbi's favorite month. Really, really, it's the best.
We can breathe and or go back to the mountain of stuff that we put off until after.
Yeah, that's the
holidays.
problem. This is the catch-up time. This is
Yeah.
what I like catch-up. But
yeah, I had a history teacher that used to call it a Heinz Day. Catch up, get it?
you
love that.
I see that.
See what I did there?
I relish that joke.
But now let's look back. And we each have different writing processes and different different preparation processes. And I did find a common thread, though, between our 2 Yom Kippur sermons. And that was, as we discussed, that we were inspired in different ways by our children or interactions with our children. And so I thought that we would explore that a little bit. These, on the Yom Kippur sermons, you spoke about K-pop demon hunters. Give me a sense of how that came about and maybe a standing on one foot quick version of what happened.
So in the movie or the sermon or both?
I think we're going to have to help everyone.
Have to help everyone through this. For the uninitiated, K-pop Demon Hunters is a Netflix phenomenon that has taken over anybody's home with young children over the past since the summer. It tells the story aptly of K-pop stars, Korean pop stars who also hunt demons. And I remember watching it towards the end of the summer with my kids. And as I was watching it, I had the realization that the themes of the film, while presented very, very simply and very, very accessibly, also resonated profoundly with elements of the Jewish tradition, specifically elements that have to do with tshuva and repentance and themes surrounding Yom Kippur. So I remember I looked over at Michelle, my wife, immediately after watching the film, tearing up a little bit. Admittedly, I'm not really proud of that, but I was tearing up a little bit, saying, I think this is my Yom Kippur sermon. And from there, everything kind of just fell into place.
So there's a little bit of chicken and egg here, right? You're in that sort of ramp up to the holidays. And you should know also that this betrays a little bit of the difference in the way that we write. I am neurotic about thinking about these things as far back as last November. I already have this November, next high holidays, ideas. That's me. But you were in that headspace of the high holidays.
Yeah, I have to be in the moment. If it's not emotionally salient for me, the sermon doesn't work. It doesn't land. So I was very much still thinking about what I was going to say, and it just kind of clicked, and it connected with much of the work that I had done prior to coming to Adif at a place called Beit Teshuvah, which is an inpatient rehab and synagogue, and so in which they dealt with this idea of repentance and owning aspects of who you are, even maybe, the Jungian shadow self, right? The aspects of us that we hide and we push down, and elevating them. And Jewish tradition actually uh, offers the idea that when we elevate the parts of ourselves maybe that are more broken and we might be ashamed of, those are actually touch points and access points for connection, growth, and spiritual development. Too often we push that down, and the act of tshuva isn't getting rid of the parts that we don't like about ourselves. It's actually embracing it. And that's kind of the theme of K-pop Demon Hunter. Sorry to ruin the spoiler alert for everybody, but um, and just seeing that parallel was too good for me, and it brought up um, all sorts of teachings from other traditions that I'm aware of. I brought in kintsugi, which is the Japanese art of broken pottery, putting it back together, and how when they rejoin the pieces back together, they gild it. They use gold in order to put it back together. So instead of the piece being a whole thing, it's actually more valuable now in that it's broken. And the sermon was essentially encouraging people to embrace our shared brokenness.
And of course, this was why your children invited you to watch this movie.
That is not why. They invited me to watch the film because it was all their friends were talking about it, and the music slaps, and the songs really do slap. I'm not a fan of K-pop, but I mean, like, who doesn't want to hunt a demon? But I really enjoyed some of the music, and I got to use some of the music a little bit in the sermon. Some of the lyrics were really poignant and profound for the theme that I chose.
Yes, my daughter, of course, only wanted a pink braided ponytail to be Rumi for Halloween.
For Halloween, yeah,
which was a big hit.
Yeah. It was. We've had. I mean, it's all over the place. I know that the the movie was probably a little bit of a stretch for some members of the community to relate to.
Yeah, you had to translate K-pop Demon Hunters for the community and use that as a tool to bring them to also the translation of this moment of tshuva. So there was sort of like, if the community was here, you had this reference of a Jewish reference that maybe people were familiar with somewhat, but you were really bringing to the forefront of their Jewish consciousness, and a pop culture reference that maybe some people were familiar with, and somewhere you met in the middle where these things coalesced.
That was the goal, was to try to make it accessible, right? To use whatever was happening in pop culture or K-pop culture, to make the tradition accessible, to open up the door to say, hell no, actually, Judaism has what to say about this, or this is reflected back in our tradition, with nuance, and it's not just slaying demons. It's elevating all of us, all of ourselves.
I love that, and I think that it did allow people, of course, to smile, because even if you're only passingly aware of this cultural phenomenon, the idea that a rabbi is cool enough to quote K-pop Demon
Cool, yes, cool.
I know. Well, that's one of the reasons why we became rabbis. You see,
we're cool.
The bar for being cool in rabbinical school is so low that you have to almost trip over it, right? And that's why I'll speak for myself, not as cool as you. I'll say that's one of the reasons I became a rabbi, so that I could barely surpass.
I was never as cool as I was in rabbinical school.
Yeah,
I was the cool.
For sure.
Yeah, for sure.
For sure. And again, we probably shouldn't be saying this to the world, because this is now going out into a world with cooler people.
Yeah, but they know they're not on the rabbi scale. We're still ahead of the rabbi scale.
We're nerdy lovable.
But so my sermon came from my experience with my children watching this film. What yours came from such a personal and deep interaction you had with Anael?
Yeah, so this one goes back to November of 2024, when Anael, who is actually this coming week, here we are in November of 2025, she's about to turn 7, so she had just turned 6. And she was looking at the scrapbooks. My wife, Deva, is incredible every year at sort of chronologuing our family's life for a year in a scrapbook. And she's been doing this for really almost 2 decades now, and more than 2 decades. And Anael was looking at one from 2013, probably actually 2014, in there, and she was looking for herself in the pictures. Now, if you do the math, we're in 2025. She's turning 7. She was nowhere around. And yeah, and so she wanted to know where she was in the picture. And we said, well, you weren't around yet. And she saw that my wife was pregnant in the picture. She said, oh, I was in mommy's belly. And we said, no, that was your older brother, Avi. And she thought for a second and she said, then I was still with God. Mm. And that idea just took me, and immediately, first of all, I had this moment of closeness, and again, didn't cry, definitely cried, with my daughter, and I told everyone about it. But simultaneous to that, just like you, simultaneous to watching the movie with your kids, as in the parallel pathways of my mind, I was already writing the High Holiday Yisker Memorial Sermon. I knew that this idea of a then 6-year-old saying with no sense of doubt, with complete faith that only a child can have, that she was with God before she was born, I knew that that was going to figure into how we confront memory of those who are no longer with us, which is the theme of the Yisker sermon on Yom Kippur. And I went from there, and it felt very personal.
It was very personal.
Yeah, I spoke about turning 50 this year. I spoke about having...
You're turning 50?
I know.
Okay, sorry.
I spoke about having likely more Yom Kippurs behind me than ahead of me, and what it means to come into face to face with our mortality, and whether it's a comfort or an anxiety producing emotion, that we one day will again be with God, and that all those who are not yet born, who will carry on our legacy, some of them are still with God.
So what was it like bearing your soul for the congregation at that moment?
So, it's a challenging and vulnerable place, right? And I felt a closeness. I really did. I felt a closeness with the congregation. And afterwards, giving a sermon in a large group is very different than a class or a conversation. It's frankly not unlike recording a podcast, right? That it's kind of like throwing a ball over a fence and having no idea whether there's another person on the other side of the fence that's catching that ball and is going to throw it back to you, whether the ball's just going to land in a puddle on the other side of the fence, or whether it's going to break a window, right? And it's a little better when you're giving a sermon because you do see human faces, and you do see reactions, and you see people leaning in. And I felt that in that moment. I felt that sense of communion and connection. I definitely felt and saw and observed a couple people who were uncomfortable with the idea of speaking about a world in which we no longer were going to be present. It is uncomfortable to talk about death. And yet that's the point or the purpose and the use of the Yisker sermon, right? Is that we need to land people there so that when we begin those prayers, they are ready to open their hearts to recall and even cry about, and certainly feel the presence and the memory of those who are no longer with us. And you've spoken in the past about the vulnerability of crying in shul, right? And that idea of being vulnerable was it was scary at first. As it happened, I did it a couple of times on the High Holiday, as I talk about diabetes and not being able to fast, and other people. I did not thread those together. Other people came up to me afterwards, sort of after I had thrown the ball over the fence, and told me their experience on the other side of the fence, which was that they had received that in a heartfelt way, and that they felt closer to me, to the community, and also to their own vulnerabilities in that way. Because once you throw yourself out there in a leadership role, it's a permission, right? It gives permission for other people to feel their feelings in that space if they're willing to. And some people, they can't, right? And so the anonymity of a large group is also safe.
Hmm.
But in this moment, or I should say, and in this moment, it felt good. And I really have to thank my daughter for that.
Mm.
I have to thank her because she said it with none of the depth and weight that I felt it as a 50-year-old almost.
Not yet.
Yeah. But she said it with an honesty and a purity
And innocence.
and an innocence that gave me the permission to explore that vulnerability or uncertainty, and then in turn give other people. Sometimes kids do that. They stop you in your tracks, and you say, "Oh, that is the truth right there," because it's not filtered by societal pressures or what will other people think.
Well, it's like Heschel, right? It's the naivete of children. We're able to sort of pierce through the nonsense. Um, yeah, absolutely, and they're able to maybe even see God in the world in ways that we can't.
My wife tells a story about right after her father died, and that also figured into the sermon about at that time it was our second child, Ezra, who she was holding over her shoulder, and he was talking to someone. And that naivete, which we call first naivete, Ricoeur, the philosopher, said that the adults can attain a second naivete when we allow ourselves to sort of immerse in that vulnerability and in that moment. And that's what I think I wanted to allow the adults in the room to do, was to use Anna L's first naivete, which you mentioned, to give us permission to put our toe into the second naivete, which is the adult naivete that allows us the blessing of faith, allows us to see and model ourselves from our children in that way.
And to be vulnerable in public, and specifically in Jewish spaces, which, so many Jewish spaces today, it's hard to feel like we can be vulnerable. The dafka to create a shul where that's the goal.
Right. And there are barriers, right? There are obstacles to feeling that vulnerable, right? So one of the obstacles, I think, is how intellectual our tradition is, right? We ask good questions and we think about hard things and we piece them apart in all sorts of ways, looking at them all from all sorts of angles. That's sort of what we call the Talmud. Okay. There we go. Right behind us. And that's one barrier to feeling vulnerable, because we can sort of have that paralysis by analysis, and we can overthink everything. And then the other, especially I think on the high holidays, and this is something that we have worked many years to break this shell, is just the pomp and circumstance, the formality of the day. We're asking to bare our souls, and we're dressing up in our dressiest clothing. We're putting on our biggest facade and our most impressive facade at the moment when we're supposed to be standing, sort of exposed and vulnerable.
Wow. Well, the social reality is at odds with the spiritual reality we're trying to create.
Yeah. And I thank you not only for being a part of this conversation, but for being my partner in learning from our children on how to do that, and also in being part of a community that allows us to push into those uncharted waters, and to say that maybe if we can attain just a little bit of that second naivete that allows us to immerse in the awe of Judaism, not so much the fairy tale magic, but the awe of it, then that is not at all pediatric. That is actually quite deep, and it is quite meaningful. And even though our kids or our kids' movies might be the entree into that, where we land is a place of great meaning, many questions, a good amount of intellect, and also a good amount of heart and emotion. I'm grateful to our children for letting us get there.
Me too.
Thank you for tuning in to Center of Gravity. We are working to make this podcast as engaging and meaningful as we can, and so we need your help. If you have any feedback, questions, comments, thoughts, ideas for future podcasts, or any other ways that we can reach you, please email us at centerofgravity@adithisrael.org. Thanks so much for tuning in. Shalom.